a lot of sacred places are hidden. So nobody would believe that this is one, but it clearly is. My name is Sara and I was born where we're sitting today, among the trees in an old house, and I've gradually managed to acquire for my trust, which is called St George's Trust, the land and buildings around here that have managed to survive so many cataclysms, natural and human, and here we are today looking at the trees.
I came here 35 years ago, and I lived quite a normal life, had a 9-to-5 job. I worked as a carpenter in the construction industry, and as soon as I came here, a very strange feeling came over me, like I'd slipped dimensions, like this was a world of its own, unlike any other world I'd been to.
This is a node, and it's a dangerous place to be. You've got to be pretty weird to live in it. I mean, I've had lots of ups and downs. You definitely can't live like a human. You have to be pretty selfless and pretty kind of self-effacing, I guess. Think more about other beings, trees, animals, wild animals, people than you do about you.
I tried to battle on in the normal world, but I found it more difficult. I think obstacles began to get in my way, accidents were happening, things were pulling me away from the old life of normality and pulling me back here.
What do you feel on this mound? What's the feeling you get?
There's a lightness of energy. You definitely can, if you're into vibration, the psychic wind that Buddhists use and that, it definitely comes through your feet, it comes right through the top of your head.
In more recent years we've learned that there's a fairy here. And it all makes sense. It was the fairy directing all this action, I believe. And I began to get a greater affinity with nature. I felt a greater compassion for animals. I began to become more disgusted with the normal world, the world of destruction and capitalism and just chasing the next book, and I ended up here as the shepherd taking care of the sheep. So we've got 20 sheep. We keep them on a non-profit basis. They live a natural life here until they die. We've got horses as well. Horse that we fed with bottles because his mother had to be put down. She was very ill, and that's it really. We found a life of happiness here, which doesn't involve chasing money, I suppose you could say.
Do you think the fairy wanted you to be here?
I think the fairies choose people who have the potential to understand what they're trying to get across. And they have a message for the entire world, I would say, to stop abusing nature and start respecting the natural world again, like our ancestors used to. And we've got to start loving the world again before it's too late.
I was born in the house on this land, and
what was it like when you were growing up here compared to now?
We had a what you would call now a sustainable farm. I mean, we had about 1,000 acres all over the place because this land wouldn't grow very much. We use as much natural attitude to that land as we possibly could. So we milked the cows by hand. As a little kid, you know, I wasn't very old at all, maybe about 4 or 5, I was entrusted with driving the cattle all the way into the parkland next door here, and bringing them back for milking at night. And I loved it. I just loved it. You could get lost in there. I've been lost in fog and all sorts of stuff you get when you live near a river. And I communicated with the cattle. I sometimes used to have a ride on one of them. And you know, we did that. And we had goats, we had sheep, which we used to shear for the wool. We used to milk the goats as well. We had lots of hens and ducks and geese, and we lived off the land. It's a sacred place to me, and I think to other people. And I suppose the interesting thing about sacred places is that many of the most sacred ones are completely unknown. I mean, virtually invisible, you know. And I've learned so much about nature and so much about this area since I was born here quite a long time ago. And I spent most of my time in my adult life trying to save it and save other people's places as well from the destruction and deprivations of the modern world. And try to help people to learn how to live in a more sympathetic and sustainable way. Not with gadgets, but just kind of with peace of mind. Because I think if you find people who can save their places, save their locations, and just keep them natural, you have a place of peace. And, you know, when people in religions talk about peace, I don't think it's just the opposite of war. It's about people wanting to really connect with all the other species and beings in their existence. Because to me, you know, there's no doubt that there are other dimensions and there are beings well beyond the frequency, which is very limited, that humans have. Even a lot of animals, you know, they have a different kind of frequency of communication. We do quite a lot of work with bats, which are fascinating, but of course they live at a totally different frequency to us, and their whole communication system, which is really complicated, is at a very high frequency compared with ours. We've had visits from 17 different species just in this wood. But one of the reasons is that the wood is a really, really old wood.
Where we're sitting here?
Where we're sitting here could have been the edge of Sherwood Forest, yeah. As Nottinghamshire disappears into Lincolnshire, just over the border.
Yeah.
We're right on the edge here.
The historic forest of Robin Hood.
That's it, yeah. But, you know, Robin Hood may have been several people, and all over the world he's a cipher for people who want to live a peaceful life, but the authorities won't let them. So here we are. So I've tried over many years to help people who have got a problem saving their location to save it. And the trust itself started with you know, very simple set of premises, like or precepts, I should say, like you know, if you've got a standing stone, if you've got a monument that means something to you, if you've got a meadow that has never been ploughed or built on, if you've got an ancient hedge which has got a lot of different species of tree and hedge in it, if you've got a protected species of animal or even fish or anything like that, if you've got a waterway, if you've got a well, if you've got a spring, and you're worried about it, if you're worried about your woodland, you know, if you're worried about an old house or a church or something like that, that somebody's going to try to destroy, then there are ways and means of saving it. And a lot of people know about this, but one of the most important things is persistence. You never give up, you have to keep going, even if you have some failures, keep going, because things are always fluid. You know, time is a long idea. we have a limited time on Earth, and we really should think about other generations and maybe even coming back as somebody else or something else. And, if you wanted to come back as a tree, in some countries you'd have a bit of a problem now because you might not have anywhere to come back. So we believe that living things can actually have something to tell us, and we can maybe try to help them. Do trees communicate? Do animals communicate? Of course they do. Yeah, you can learn these things, and this is what I would term the path of the Merlins. I don't think Merlin was only one person, and in fact it's believed that long before Christianity, when the ancient Britons were ancient Britons, or whatever you want to call them, here on these islands and all over the world, there were people indigenous to places all over the world, that there were universities then, and they didn't get people ready for jobs. They got people ready to interpret the hidden things, the unknown worlds of the other dimensions. The world of the Merlins, which in the Welsh language now is Merlin, with a double D in the middle that sounds like a hard TH, was about the bards, and that's been Walt Disneyized as people who do singing for the king and queen and write poetry, but it is far beyond that. It was about sacred interpretation of reality. So as a Merlin you have to be very light, and you have to have not just communication but observational abilities, and this comes in waves throughout your life. The first wave is believing that there are invisible beings around. So while I've been here, in my life, I've had a lot of mentoring from unseen beings. It has to be so because of the kind of strange places I've been and the strange things I've found. You look at the way Merlin worked with Arthur, and he couldn't always do good for Arthur, but he was generally doing good, and he had his eye on the long term, and that's very much my kind of attitude in life. You need your eye on the long term. You don't need to worry too much about, you've got to stay alive, but you don't need to worry too much about being rich or beating the next door neighbour down, or having some kind of advantage over people. That isn't the point. The point is we're living in a really interesting, on a really interesting planet, a jewel probably in the solar system, and certainly possibly in the galaxy, and possibly in the universe, a jewel, and we have so much to learn about it. So the way of the Merlins is one way to learn about it, and then this is a place of peace where people can find out more about their own abilities. And there are lots of other things, there's the healing. Yes, I've done the healing, especially skeletal situations where people need help with their spine or their joints or whatever. And that's something that comes to you in connection with nature, especially from the tree energy, because obviously that people have written about this in lots of places now, but if you sit or stand with a tree, you can exchange energy with it, and you can increase your own energy and then learn to transfer that to somebody who needs some. That's one of the things. You have to learn about herbs. I mean, as well as knowing the names of the summer stars, which are quite difficult to learn because the summer stars are not as obvious as the winter ones, you need to have a connection with nature. And when I'm doing anything with herbs, to help an animal that's sick, or even a person that's sick with a waiver in place that I haven't caused anything, if they really want it, instead of something off the shelf in a chemist, a prescription medicine, if they really want something herbal, then you've got knowledge, obviously, but that isn't the point. The point is what the plant is saying to you. If the plant is saying, no, I'm not the one for that kidney problem, you know. Even though you know that it's in a book and it says it is, then there's something else that's better. And in that respect, you know, I've often noticed that plants will grow where diseases are. So violets, which are a cancer cure, you know, you'll often find violets in places where people are going to have leukemia. They're beautiful, you know, and of course it's not only for that, but if you've got somebody there with leukemia, violets are there for that, you know. But learning about herbs, learning about energies, learning the different things, you know, if you've got heart trouble, wherever you live, there will be something to cure it, and it won't be the same thing. That's why you get, it's confusing, but it's why you get 20 things that you can do something for heart trouble with, and all these plants are sacred in that capacity, basically.
And did you always have mystical experiences on this land?
I've always been a bit of a dreamer, but it's led me on. I've allowed it to take me over. I think you have to relax into it, you know. I think this is the thing. People want to get from A to B, and being a Merlin type isn't like that. Merlin types have networks, you know. So, yes, I certainly was always interested in fairies, and later found out that we have a resident one, and that they're not like it is on Walt Disney. They can appear as they like, you know. I mean, they can dress up, or they're masters of disguise, they're masters of illusion, and they're masters of eluding you as well. You know, I mean, they play tricks, they do all sorts of things. And sometimes they just play tricks to let you know that they're around. I found a wonderful jewel once on a molehill when I was a kid. You know, it was like a medieval thing. I don't really know what it was. But later in life, they told me to put it back. So I had to do that with a big vision that was a bit of a frightener. That was quite frightening. But yeah, I've met them in dreams. I can't say that I've particularly seen them like fairies. But at one time, I was doing a lot of meditating, and I saw things that other people have seen, which were the tiny, tiny nature spirits of flowers going around. It sounds crazy, but it's been seen by other people, going around in tiny vehicles, like little tiny craft in jewel-like colours, like bright blue and bright green and silver and gold and that, and zipping among the flowers. I've seen that. I've experienced gnomes, who are the earth spirits, who tend the roots of the trees and so forth. They will give you a show and make contact, but then the trust thing, the faith thing is very important. You know, you have to believe that they're there, and they will show you that they're there. So as I grew up, and I did a lot of fairy tale type stuff all over the place. I was really interested in legends and collected a lot of legends and did a lot of singing. I haven't got a great voice, but I love singing, and I do know that the nature spirits love singing and dancing. So if you're good at tapping a drum or a baram, you know, if you can play anything, if you can just sing a good tune and keep it going for a few minutes, they really enjoy that. So I've done quite a bit of that. And I would encourage everybody to do that wherever they are, you know, in a public park, on a pavement, near a tree, near a pond, whatever. Sing a song and think about them. Don't think about you, you know, think about them, and they will activate. If you look here, you can see that there's an arc formed, and it actually goes all the way out there to those over there, and comes around where that sheep is. They've kicked them out a little bit, but it's one of the big rings. I mean, the scientific explanation is that there's trees under here thousands of years ago, not prehistoric necessarily, but you know, and their root systems kind of disappear out to circumferences well beyond where the trunk was, and different kinds of fungi are still living and you know, they have their mycelium, you know, the root system deep in the earth, and it comes out as the fruiting body on top, round the nutrient that's still left in the soil from, you know, thousands of years ago. The fairies are supposed to, well, my view is, you know, it's a fairy ring. You're not supposed to step inside them. It's a bit difficult when they're big like that. They're everywhere, you know. The fairies hold their meetings in them, but I tend to think that it happens when they dance in a ring, and this is, they call these things up.
And you said fairies like sheep?
Fairies do like sheep. Fairies like all animals, you know. And they love to see humans interacting with animals because it brings on the compassion, which is how you open your heart. The heart centre's the key to nature. We all know, you know, it's the green chakra. Well, fair enough, it's green, yeah, but if you open your heart, then your intelligence will come with it. Act like a mechanism, because that really is what people are very good at. You know, they can, although their frequency is limited, they can actually amplify frequency from other beings and from other places, you know. So I mean, when you say, I say other places, but you know, the whole world is probably a female being, which people have called Gaia. You know, I worked with the Lovelock who wrote Gaia. I worked with his brother, but not on that. We were in business, or we were in the business school somewhere, and we used to hide all our spirituality. But he lived like this. He lived in a wild place on an island, near Ireland actually, off the coast. That's where his home, he'd made his home. He had lots of wild horses, and we all lived like this, but we weren't allowed to say so in the commercial world. Yeah, because the commercial world is about selling concrete, really. You know, selling stuff that you can license and patent and get money for. It's all about that.
And you lived in both worlds?
Well, I mean, I grew up through a time when it was commercialism was getting really bad. Now that a lot of people in the West are more deprived, more recently, I guess, because of COVID and things like that. They're more deprived. I mean, they can't have everything they want. They can't go everywhere they want. They may not be able to afford stuff they want, and the money supply is drying up, or whatever the hell's happening, I don't know. People need to remember who they are, you know. We walk with gods. We walk with other frequencies. It's not just us. I mean, you know, if anybody wants to, they have been here, they have had visions here, people. They come looking for the truth, and they often find very extraordinary visions of what the truth really is, which can be quite frightening, but it's a node. So you're going to have a very extraordinary type of energy here. It can be quite repelling, you know, like a magnet with the wrong pole on it. It can be quite off-putting, you know. It's not like friendly, touchy-feely. It's more like warrior stuff, because the fairy is defensive, I'm defensive, but I'm very open-minded. So like I'm not really into selfishness, and that's a bit of a problem in the consumer world that we've had up to now. But a lot of people are getting rid of all that and learning more about what the truth is. So wanting to know the truth, wanting to live in a different way, wanting to take time to find that out and to find out what their own strengths are, you know. Because a lot of people have never cultivated themselves. I mean, you could be good at all sorts of things that you don't know about that are not commercial at all. And that could be the real you. This land has given me so much. It's taught me everything I know. I've been to universities, but you can't learn there what you can learn on your own land. And I mean, I would just say to anybody, if anybody wants any advice, save the place that you belong in. It may well be the place you were born in, or maybe your grandparents came from, but be there, be in whatever that place is, and make sure it stays there, and make sure you learn the communication in that place, the language, you know. Make sure you sing, even if you've got a lousy voice. Make sure you beat a little drum or a baram. You know, make sure you have a triangle, make some tinkling noises. Send some lovely frequency out there that's not just for you, but your communication, a gift to them. That's what I would say.